The inpatient unit is my main role. I work mainly currently with teens, age 13 to 17 years old, and some adults too. I try to get to know people's story. I coordinate with the admissions team, try to get the take on
what is holding most people back from success.
You have to recognize, how can I both be using the emotional parts of my brain and the logical parts of my brain to work together instead of acting wholly on emotion or only on logic. You don't want to be a robot and only act on logic.
Do you feel that society cares for men? I hate to ask this question. Failed men. Welcome back, guys. Again, I'm Samuel Smiley, and thank you for joining and tuning in. Today, we're actually sitting down for an interview with Dr. Baring, and he's going to explain what he does, what his practice does, and then we're going to kind of get into some questions that I really believe will be helpful for all of us on our own personal journeys. Barry, how are you?
All right.
Good. Inviting me. Yeah, of course, man. Of course, we're friends. You're also my neighbor, which this actually worked out very well. So I really wanted to have you come by and I'll just start off with, what do you do? Tell us what you do and how do you affect society?
Yeah. So my formal role, I work as a child, adolescent, and adult board certified psychiatrist, currently at a psychiatric hospital right now with my main role working on the inpatient unit, and I spend some time in our intensive outpatient program. The inpatient unit is my main role. I work mainly currently with teens, age 13 to 17 years old, and some adults too, on reasons. I work with them on usually suicidal thoughts, hallucinations, and that hallucinations can be auditory, visual, a lot of other things. A lot of the people that come in, they're admitted for suicidal thoughts or some suicide attempt. There's also many other reasons why people might be admitted to an inpatient psychiatric hospital. I do that for teens, some adults, and in terms of what I do with people, I try to get to know people's story. I coordinate with the admissions team, try to get the take on what kind of led them to the hospital, why are they in the hospital, or what led them to get assessed by the hospital. On the inpatient setting, usually I'll talk with someone about medications. For teenagers, I try to help coordinate with their family. I'll give them a call to get the better context. I talk with the teen and their family on their medications, what they've taken in the past, why they've taken it, has it been helpful, any side effects, try to come up with a plan for medications moving forward. I also work with many teens on psychotherapy. That can include different techniques: cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, sort of use our psychodynamic approaches as well. There's many other schools of therapy that I try to integrate into my approach.
Would you call those modalities?
Modalities, yeah. And a lot of them sort of interweave throughout sort of just my interactions, and while I consciously think about them, I just try to integrate different techniques. Most people that we see in the hospital are there for a week, maybe 7 to 10 days. That's usually the average length of stay.
Okay.
Some a little bit shorter, some longer, but the goal is to, whether that's teens, adults, or even I'm licensed to see younger kids too in the hospital. The goal is to help people feel better various ways. That can be their family, their living situation. We have a social work team, a nursing team that really helps too, so I coordinate with them. And we're really working a team model to help get someone to a place where they're feeling a lot more stable, feeling better, and they might not need the hospital as much.
Wow. That is extremely impactful to society in more ways than I thought you would explain. Would you say that you're seeing a trend? Is there a trend that you see, especially when you said that there's some younger adolescents? Is it a certain type of social class that these people are from, or is it just a spectrum?
Yeah, so I think mental health difficulties, maybe we can take a step back, because a lot of different groups, cultures, families, they might identify something as a mental health struggle or difficulty. For some people, it's a very internal experience for the individual, what we call patients. Sometimes it's within their family unit. Things could be better, and then their environment could be improved. Sometimes it's usually always a mixture of both. And it affects a lot of different people, a lot of different classes, groups, cultures. I think it sort of depends on how open the person is and their family is to any sort of treatment. Whether they view it as treatment or not is also important. Most parents I talk to, and when I see adults, most family members that I talk to usually want their family member in the hospital because things have gotten really bad. It's usually a crisis situation when you consider going into the hospital. Now, how long someone is in the hospital, what things happen in the hospital, those may be up for discussion a little bit more. But for most people, they're usually scared about their family member potentially doing something that's a permanent consequence or solution to a fairly temporary feeling.
Wow. So by the time you see them, everyone around them basically have tried everything that they know how to at this point.
Everything that most people have known how to do or have had access to. I think there's also, you mentioned the class. I think about socioeconomic. Yeah, this actually does probably impact
access to information or
access to care.
Very good point.
I know there's some programs, like I work in the intensive outpatient program, and there's a lot of other programs out there too, where a lot of people can do a day treatment program or afternoon treatment program that helps them avoid coming to the hospital. Some people are able to have regular therapy or regular medication visits where they can talk with someone and also get a medication plan on a more on a schedule that they'd like better.
Right.
So sometimes that does affect sort of the socioeconomic status can also affect who comes to the inpatient unit. But on the inpatient unit, we also see a lot of different people, a lot of different classes, groups, cultures. There's a lot of people that come in.
Okay, gotcha. How important is our mental health in regards to living a successful life?
I think it's really important. Mental health is really important to leading a successful life. I think people really care about their physical health. It's something that you can see someone, if it looks like they take care of themselves, then you can tell almost by not even talking with them.
Yep.
I think there's another layer of it because fortunately or unfortunately for everyone, our brains, our minds are connected to our bodies. So our brain, our mind health is also really important to help take care of our physical body too, and vice versa. So if you're able to take care of your physical health, that's great. But if your relationships are not in a good place, if you don't feel good on the inside, if you feel really lonely, if you feel really hopeless, then you could be in the best physical shape of your life. We know that, taking care of your body is also important for your mental health. So I wanted to mention that.
Sure.
And there's other things that should be done to really help our own mental health, help take care of ourselves and be successful.
Do you see a decline in mental health in society from your lens? From when you started, I know you're new in the practice, but you did have your, forgive me?
The residency and
Your
fellowship.
residency and fellowship, yeah. But now you're, that's as extreme as probably what you're doing now. But are you seeing a trend over the years? I mean, we've known each other 5 years now.
Yeah.
And if so, what is the trend?
Yeah. I'd say I've seen different groups of people, I guess, in certain times in residency and fellowship. There'd be certain people with really intense schizophrenia or bipolar or addiction. I also saw a lot of younger kids, up to 3, 4, 5 years old. I saw people who were 80, 90 years old too. I saw people with, the best insurance in the world and the ones that did not have insurance. And so I think it'd be hard for me to say that I see definitely a decline or an increase. I think there's just a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
And maybe I can comment on maybe what are some of the problems that I think about affect our mental health, our society's mental health today. A lot of people that I get to talk to, usually their relationship with electronics and media could use some help. I think most people, including myself, could recognize that at certain times.
I'm right there with you.
They've
made it very addicting.
Very addicting. And I think electronics, media, they're not going away. We're also using a medium where we're communicating.
I can say that, yeah.
And
But
so-
hoping to do better with this form of entertainment, but at the same time, it still is via the same channel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just being mindful of it, I think, is the most important.
Yeah.
Coming up with a plan of like, hey, setting some boundaries. I think boundaries are also really important, whether that's electronic, with media, with relationships, with other activities in life. Boundaries are important.
On that note, so speaking of boundaries, so I wake up, go for a run or a walk. Sometimes I run and a walk. And this phone's with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be listening to, obviously something educational for me.
Mm-hmm.
But even with that, what would you say, how would you recommend or diagnose someone if you were to say cell phone usage? If someone was like, hey, give me some advice. Here's how I'm using it. I'm basically all the time.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say?
Yeah, right now in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual 5 Text Revision, the DSM-5 Text Revision TR, I don't think there's an official specific addiction, but we know that from some of those substance use disorder diagnoses, if something is really impairing your life in a social way with your job, or affecting your relationships, that's sort of a way to recognize, hey, maybe this is not the healthiest thing. Maybe the use needs a change. For some people, you could argue that a lot of media usage for one person is different for another. It kind of depends on each individual and sort of their background, and the individual confidence that they can have with whoever they're talking to. Some people also probably have more relationships online than in person.
I can see that causing a very giant societal issue.
Yeah,
if that's the case.
I think there's some aspect of in-person relationships that really requires you to work through difficult problems with other people. Sometimes it can just be as simple as, my neighbor did this one thing and then they parked in my parking spot and I didn't like that. Being mad about it may be appropriate. The feelings that someone has are important to recognize, but also how do you work through that conflict? I think that's actually really important, and it requires thought, careful planning. You don't want to make your neighbor so escalate it,
Right.
And recognize that, that the other person has needs too. You may have needs too, and recognize.
And maybe not assume an intention.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like on that note, everyone's a keyboard warrior, right? So how do you see, with that being said, maybe with this addiction, with the phones, that there's less conflict resolution happening? Because we kind of live in society, it's like, well, if you disagree with me politically, or if you disagree with me with this, whatever, we're cutting people off now. Do you think that has been exacerbated because of technology, the way we're using it or misusing?
Yeah, I think there's some component of social media, like the term you use, keyboard warrior, where a lot of people feel really impassioned and they express their thoughts online. And to some degree, we've created this system where that's acceptable. And also, some of those things that you may see online can also move people a lot.
Yeah.
And that can spur them to do something maybe in person that was really impactful for them. So I don't want to diminish that. And I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if there's any studies that I could cite, but I think social media can also, and media can help create a polarized environment.
Sure.
Where people sort of, the algorithm kind of directs them to their own thoughts and ideas. And I think it's really important to have friends, colleagues who you are able to work out conflict with, and you can try to understand different points of view and really hone in on, like, why is it that I believe this? Why does someone else believe something else? And how can we sort of understand each other? Because I think that's
And maybe how do we remove ourselves out of it? Like I had to do this recently where I was talking to my fiance and I was like, she's like, hey, it's leaning only one direction of this conversation that you're into. So I'm like, okay, well, all I had to, because of my IT background, I understand that there's an algorithm behind it. I'm like, well, let me just start different searches and then search. And then it was like rewrote itself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if people could do that, or maybe they're aware that they have the option, because sometimes they may think the algorithm does a really good job of making you, what I think what they call it, but it's like a loop where it's like the feedback loop. It's like you're getting reaffirmed in your belief. So it's like over and over and over. And you're like, right, the world is coming apart if that's what you're digesting. And then it would help if somebody went to a park, put their phone away, or sat under the sun, and they're like, oh, or just talk to a cashier, talk to someone down the aisle, and realize everyone's not against you, or whatever the case may be. Do you think that, obviously you're working with more of on the extreme side by that time, but do you think that if the average person was getting that interaction, the normal interactions that we used to get maybe when we were growing up, that we would have less of this disassociation with other people and this disconnect or almost cut offness, it feels like, with society?
Yeah. I think there's sort of two major types of interactions that usually involve some sort of conversation I think are really important. I think you have to have both. So the first one is just sort of those usually at least a couple minutes conversations. They could be deep conversations, probably talking about something at work with someone, about something you go into. It could be thinking about some philosophical or other thought that someone has. Those important conversations to really delve into, ideas, passions, emotions. And there's also these sort of micro interactions that I think are really important that affect how everyone feels every day on a daily basis. It's the nod that you get when you pass by your neighbor that you know. It's the smile from the cashier, and you smile back. Mm-hmm. It's walking at the grocery store and you come with your cart, someone else comes with their cart, and you acknowledge each other. Like, I acknowledge that you're going this way, I will go this way, I will accommodate you, you will accommodate me. And it's those sort of subtle acknowledgements that are really important.
We take that for granted, but what you're saying right there is major, because when we were on a park, when we were on the trails, I find it very relieving and I don't know. It's like it makes me feel good about society when people are saying good morning. I'm like, because I'm quick to say it, but when every once in a while you do have people who are like, just like trying to stay in their own world. And I will say, if they're running, I understand they're tired. At the same time, when you do get that nice gesture, that the neighbor who waves at you, it does make you feel like, okay, I may not know that person, but it does almost like signals you're safe.
It's acknowledgement. It's almost a micro affirmation of your humanity, that you're seen. You are seen. You are worthy of being acknowledged. And the way the setting is important, because if you're walking past someone on a trail, unless you know that you're probably not going to stop and talk. But
correct.
The boundaries, the frame is set to where both of you maybe have expected something like that. Mm-hmm. You acknowledge each other, and then you step out of that frame and mutually.
I like that. So that's a frame, is what you call that.
Yeah. I think another example is if you go to a restaurant, or I bet even if you walk around a store and you see that everyone is sort of on their phone. I mean, not everyone, but there's some tables at restaurants where at least half the time we're talking on, no one's talking.
Yeah.
At stores, you look around and you can see babies in the cart. They're the only ones who are not somewhat on their phones. I recognize having a grocery list is super important.
Right.
Imagine if you're a kid and you're growing up in this world, and then you go to the store, your dad or your mom or whoever, your family member takes care of you, but no one else acknowledges you because they're looking somewhere else. How sad is that?
And how disconnected society that you don't have the interactions of such a cute baby, or just
Exactly.
I remember being a young man, very young man, and the elders would speak to you, and you would speak back. Oh, what are you buying? What you guys doing here? They would crack a joke. They would say something. But you just made me realize how quiet the grocery store is now. Like, that's got, outside of the music, you used to hear people, you would hear kids, you would hear people talking, like moms discussing things.
Yeah.
It's not as rare for me because, I talk to anybody.
Yeah.
If you have a pulse, or maybe it won't, once we have robots, you won't need a pulse. I'll talk to them too. But okay, so that's very interesting. Wow. I'm going to come back to that. I had a thought about AI now. But do you find fulfillment in what you do?
I find fulfillment in what I do. I think there's also a lot of problems with a lot of different systems that make it more difficult. One thing, I think insurance is a great concept, and also the way our U.S. healthcare insurances also can sometimes make things pretty difficult.
And
at some point, the bills still have to get paid. Another thing, the access to care.
Yeah.
Sometimes I know exactly on paper what someone needs, but because of certain ability for resource, and they can also be like well off socioeconomic status wise, but depending on what's in their immediate area, they may have to drive a couple hours to get what is needed.
Wow.
We're
in Nashville, so would that be like Atlanta, something like another major city, or
there's most things.
Maybe North Kentucky or somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean there's some people. So like one example is sort of some day treatment programs or residential programs where someone needs to be there for more than a month.
Mm-hmm.
There's some really great ones. I know for some people with very specific cases, they'll have to like go to different states for certain kinds of psychiatric disorders, mental health disorders that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that the treatment isn't great here, but there's so few people that like it required, so few people that have a certain kind of mental health disorder that requires them to seek like help in other areas just besides the Middle Tennessee area.
Got it.
And there's also some places here too that like, may not be in other major metropolitan areas.
Mm-hmm. So it's like sometimes depending on their care, they're requiring a specialist in one specific issue that they're having. Wow.
And it's not like I wish for a lot of cases for whatever someone is paying, if you pay for a surgery to heal your broken leg and you can do PT, you kind of know the general path of how much it may cost. And then you can probably talk with the surgeon or the physical therapist on what's the rehab look like. But for mental health, it's harder to know exactly like what is the return on investment. You'll get some return on something, but it's hard to predict exactly what percentage, and I don't even know if that's even a fair thing to. It's hard to measure.
Them being alive, I don't know. But then the next question is what's their quality of life?
Exactly.
And how do you measure their quality of life?
Yeah, I know some people, they'll their family will like save up funds for for their family member to go to a month or two stay at one of the nicer sort of places in certain cities, and I've heard sometimes it I remember there was one teen who went to this one program in Wisconsin, and it was I think it was 3 to 6 month program, and it literally changed their life,
for the better.
For the better.
Wow.
And they were able to see a lot different for their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I always think that while they're still needing some help here and there, the amount of the help that they needed before to now is significantly different.
And we could do, as a society, obviously at that point, government kind of almost has to, at least it's the first thing that comes to people's mind. Not to get overly political,
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that President Trump is talking about mental institutions of some sort right now. I have not looked into this deeply, or I would have better questions for it. What is your take on, I guess, them being reopened, or I don't really understand do you know what's happening with that?
Yeah, so it'd be hard for me to comment on specifically, but maybe I could give some context.
Sure.
Don't quote me on this. I believe about 60 to 70 years ago, there was this movement, maybe about 50 years ago, there's this movement to sort of deinstitutionalize mental health care. This means that people before, or the earlier 1900s, mid 1900s, they would go to a mental health institution, they'd be there for probably months. There's also people that I'm sure that were probably put in a mental institution and maybe they shouldn't have been there for that long.
Right.
And did it change things for that individual and their family? It probably did. And how useful was a multi-month stay in an asylum, maybe that's what they used to call it.
Yeah.
And there's this push, this idea, I believe it was JFK or around there, but the movement is called the deinstitutionalization of mental health care, where instead of having a bunch of people in asylum, mental health institutions where they're there for like weeks to months, sometimes years, how about we get better resources in the community? We put more effort into community mental health, and then we can prevent people from coming to the hospital as much or needing to come to the hospital as much. Yeah, so around the time that JFK was in office, this act in 1963 really spurred on the deinstitutionalization of mental health care. So instead of people in asylums, or it used to be called asylums, for weeks, months, years, it would often the goal was to get more people to community-based settings, such as group homes, outpatient clinics, other less restrictive places. And part of the goal of getting more resources to the community was so that you wouldn't necessarily need to have people in asylums as much. And
did it work?
I think...
or do we have a bunch of crazies running the streets?
I think a lot of people in hindsight would say that there wasn't really as much funding dedicated towards the outpatient resources. So it ended up leading to a lot more people who still needed a lot of help, just needing help outside the hospital.
I hate to ask this question, but obviously I was joking earlier, but I would imagine that this caused a huge homeless crisis.
It does, yeah. And there's a lot of people that I'm sure most people in a lot of places, I'm sure if you were driving across the U.S. or driving across the city, or even if you live in a rural area, that, there's probably some people that probably need a lot of help.
Yeah.
They need a lot of resources, and for various reasons, they're not able to get all of their needs fully met by government programs. And sometimes nonprofits, organizations, religious, spiritual organizations try to fill that gap, and some do a really great job, and there's still a lot of people that probably need a lot of help, and most people in someone's community may know that, but they might not have access to that.
Yeah, or they may not be aware, or they may not be in the right city.
Right.
Wow. Do men and women process stress differently?
Yeah, I think based off of the biology of how men and women sort of process through, the real question was, do men and women process through emotions differently? Like a short answer, yes. There's various ways that that can happen. I think women are also a lot more in tune in general, usually with emotions. I don't know if I have the neurobiological answer for that.
That's okay, yeah. But I guess when you're seeing, let's just say it from a in-person experience, right? Are you seeing where it takes longer for one person in treatment, male, female, with exact or close to same type of maybe trauma response, or going through the same outward appearance of, okay, this person's going to need this type of care? Bipolar disorder, maybe even like anger management, suicidal tendencies, the process to get them out of that.
Yeah, I think
it's like the same.
Yeah, I think gender is one component of overall what I call case conceptualization. It's basically how do I think of a person and try to integrate their life story into their treatments. And I think someone's upbringing is also a huge influence. Early childhood, actually even in utero, some people, when they're exposed to drugs in utero, it changes them.
Sure.
You could argue that even before someone is born, the community around their two parents, that's really important too.
I did see a study that says that stress from the male goes into the sperm.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
It does. It's hard to say exactly how does it affect it and what exactly are the changes. It's hard to say exactly this causes this, because I don't think it's one causes another, but
Sure.
it's overall many factors influencing sort of one decision that turns into something else. Early childhood, it's when your brain is growing the most. It's super exciting. If you are short on food in utero, you don't have access to food in utero or in early childhood, then the chance of becoming obese later in life is significantly higher. If you were always yelled at when you were a kid, you're probably not going to speak up about things later because you just learn I'm probably going to get yelled at. Having one or two really stable relationships in a child's life growing up can really impact them, even when there's a lot of trauma. I think there's this concept of resiliency that is important too.
Sure. Grit, almost. Yeah.
Resiliency, that kind of inner drive sometimes, someone's sense of themselves, that's also influenced by the environment they grow up in, the cultural, societal norms, what they perceive as societal norms, their own internal experience. A lot of people with different medical conditions, if you have I know for people that have irritable bowel syndrome, usually have a lot higher rates of anxiety. There's a lot of serotonin in our belly, in our GI system, and in our heads too. So I think gender is one component to overall someone's story, and it'd be really hard to say this is specifically related to gender. It could be influenced by gender, and also the definition of gender. There's this biological sex, and there's also gender identity, which society defines a little bit differently, even some of the same words are being used.
Right.
So really it depends on someone's life story, and
maybe the tool belt that they were equipped or ill-equipped, depending on who raised them or the surroundings that they were in,
for sure,
affect that. That makes a lot of sense. What do you predict, if you could, is the future for psychiatric medicine?
Yeah.
Especially with AI. I'm just throwing that in there.
Yeah.
What do you think where we're going to go?
I'm hopeful that some of the genetic testing that's done can be a lot more useful. This idea of precision medicine, where we can understand more of what's going on in someone's brain and body to help them have an ideal treatment plan for them. I also think a lot of people could really benefit from a good relationship with a therapist.
Sure.
That is almost so individualized to a person. It's a tailor-made discussion that's meant to help someone with their life.
You're referring to talk therapy, EMDR, brain spotting type things?
Precision medicine. I think there's a component where AI can be helpful. I think with AI, you have to be careful. Where does the information come from?
Yes.
How biased is it? Because if you have biased information going in, you're probably gonna get biased information going out.
Right.
It's gonna be really hard to trust.
Decipher what's the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That part is very scary for all of us, though I will admit I talk to AI a lot.
Tech.
Yeah, working in tech, and then also just planning. Like I'll plan and almost use it as a board, thinking board of some sort. Like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and I'll just go and go, and I'm inputting. I understand very well how to input information so that I can get as clear as possible, or to the degree that I can, a truthful answer, or an answer that, and even that is difficult because depending on what you give AI, it will also be biased.
They will also be biased.
And it's like, oh my God, okay, how do we, and it'll be biased not just based on who programmed it, but biased based on the information you decided to give it. And then it will agree with you, even if it should disagree with you.
Exactly.
Which is very, very concerning when we talk about using that in psychiatric or medicine health. Success, obviously, like we mentioned, is very important to a lot of people, especially channels like this. In your opinion, what is holding most people back from success?
Yeah, it's a great question.
And when I say success, I do mean financial. I do mean having healthy relationships and taking a chance on themselves.
Yeah, I think there's this one framework, this trauma-informed framework called FARC. I'm gonna use one of the concepts from that. There's 3 levels of sort of emotions in that model: emotional recognition, emotional regulation, and then emotional expression. So you have to first recognize what you're feeling first. You have to put a name to it. Sometimes the words in English might not always be the most appropriate thing to describe how you're feeling.
Right.
But at least trying to figure out what am I feeling? The emotions can also be pretty abstract. So sometimes the emotions are tied to physical feelings too. When someone feels anxious, maybe their belly feels upset, or their hands get tingly. That's super important to know. For someone that gets anxious and the heart starts racing, and that same person, when they're happy, the heart can start racing. It's important to notice, how am I physically feeling, and how can I distinguish between anxious heart beating versus happy heart beating? Because both of them are going to be a little bit faster.
Interesting.
So recognizing our emotions and our physical feelings associated with it, once we can name it a little bit more, we can control it a little bit more. I know there's some, based off my friends who've worked in the military, and from working in the VA and also military settings.
Oh yeah.
That I know the military teaches about how if you can control your physiologic body rhythms, then you can do a little bit more of what you want. Basically, you can control your body, you can control your mind a little bit more. So emotional recognition, regulation, and an expression of that emotion. I mean, you could do great at regulating your own emotions and controlling it, but then if delivery of your emotions to your thoughts and behaviors is poor, then no, you have to also have behaviors that can interact with other people. So communicating that emotion is also really important too, or people won't understand your needs.
Let me make sure I'm following. If you're able to basically be the master of your physiology, your physical body, your emotions, your, to some degree, like you're saying, even registering your heart, like, oh, what am I feeling here? I'm feeling anxious. Just the acknowledgement and awareness. You're saying just by having that knowledge and then being able to apply it, right? Because they say knowledge is power, but I believe in, a lot of people have been saying that it being applied, the knowledge being applied is where the power where it actually lies. Are you saying that once you have that, then that person is more likely to be successful because they can regulate themselves through life?
Exactly. I don't.
That's very powerful.
I don't know if there was a study done or.
I know they did something with Tom Brady with his they had his heart rate and all this stuff, and he was throwing a pass, and they could tell his testosterone low, they could tell his heart rate, and they were just saying that there was something about this focus in the championship that was just off the charts at another level than most people are able to understand or even feel. But I thought about it, I was like, how many times has he been conditioned over and over and over again, that last 2-minute drill? And so he's almost prepared himself over time that by the time he got in there, obviously I was a Patriots fan, not a big Patriots fan here, a big Tom fan. I was almost, I will admit, except one game against Seahawks, I felt like I was about to pass out. But there was something interesting because I felt like he felt different than the rest of us. I still felt like he felt nervous. I felt like he felt something, but there was just something about the look in his eyes. There's something about the demeanor that you're down, like let's say, for instance, the Falcons, 28-3, I believe it was. But he was just there. He was
present.
He was so present. Like, what's my next move? What's my next play? I'm down this many points, but it didn't matter. And that, when I think about life, if you're starting a business, a new relationship, starting a family, whatever, I could imagine that if you've conditioned your body, your David Goggins style, right? You're running, you're doing something hard, and then you're getting in an environment where life is hard, you've built that up. I don't know, somebody said, I forget who it was, but there's a part of the brain that when you do something hard, it gets stronger. Are you familiar with this? I forget. I wish I knew myself.
Yeah, I wish I knew off the top of my head as well. I would not disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even in your life, I mean, it's not easy to become a doctor.
Yeah. There's this, maybe the reward circuit. There's like, wow, like that was exciting. Sometimes there's the quick, exciting, this feels good, but it's not long-term sustained feeling good. There's something about, focusing, being able to regulate our own body to be able to do something, to think something, to imagine something that helps those neurons grow, and also is really satisfying, and sort of encourages us to do more of those things.
Right. So it's a positive loop at that point, which we would all like. What is the key, would you say, to having a successful relationship and career? And can we have it all?
Yeah, I think for every person, success may look a little bit differently. I know there's some people where their parents has mentioned that their kid has suffered from severe mental illness, or they may even not suffer from severe mental illness, but they're really proud of their kid for working at the local grocery store, being someone that like everyone looks forward to seeing. That's a huge success. You could argue that maybe some people define success in terms of finances, in terms of the career. Sometimes it's their relationships. Sometimes it's where they're physically at, what they can do with their time. There's a lot of different ways that people can define success. And so I think it depends on each individual person. I think for a lot of relationships, recognizing that everyone has their own needs, and everyone is, in some ways, they're using all of their previous experiences to inform how they interact with someone else. So if you say something or do something that reminds them of someone of their previous trauma, it's going to be really hard for them to not react in a way that protects themselves.
Right. Triggers is the word that we, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's one word. So I guess the original question was, how can we make sure that we have success in our careers, our relationships, and is it possible to have it all? I think it really comes down to what someone defines as success. And for some people, it can look a lot different.
Yeah, that's a very good point. How do we as a society do a better job concerning suicide prevention?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of individual, family, cultural, political things that need to happen to overall impact to the health of our society. On an individual and family level, being able to talk about emotions, as I mentioned earlier, recognizing it so we can control it better and we can express it in a healthy way. Sometimes people are really tired. They have a lot less capacity to do that on some days compared to others. Just bake it into, make it culturally more acceptable to sort of talk about mental health. I think there also needs to be policies that support and sort of fund programs. I think it's really interesting when, they have to push the mental health funding through like so many different things. But don't worry, a new NFL stadium will be coming, and that gets passed in a different time period compared to many of the other things.
Because it's generating revenue.
Because it's generating revenue, it's cool, it's shiny. Mental health treatment is not necessarily something that you can as easily measure with dollars. You can measure success in terms of people not needing to be hospitalized as much, but or a few other ways, but it's not exactly a fancy, shiny way. It's usually measuring people's quality of life, which is really hard to measure in terms of a dollar amount.
We have a long way to go there, it sounds like. I'll follow up with this. Men account for nearly 80% of all suicides, according to research in 2023. Despite making up 50% of the population, the male suicide rate, according to this then, was roughly 4 times higher than female suicide. Have we, as society, then, failed men, and how?
I'd also be interested in what you were looking at. If I remember correctly, for men dying by suicide, it's a lot higher, but I think
Correct.
the amount,
The attempts are
the
probably.
attempts are higher percentage-wise for female. And I think
The execution of going through with suicide is higher by men. The amount intended is higher with females. They don't go through. Yeah.
And I'd have to check it. I mean, specific numbers on that, but that's generally the trend that I understand. And the question was, has society failed men? I think there's a lot of different things that have.
Meaning, do you see the same type of outpouring for men, caring for men? Do we see the opposite in society? Do people, generally speaking, do you feel that society cares for men? Because when I ask this question, I think it affects how we do everything else.
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes. Can there be more? For sure. Various. It's a really big question. I think there's a lot of social services that support men, a lot of organizations that support men. I think there's this idea that the male is usually the primary breadwinner, needing to provide everything for the family.
He can take care of himself.
He can take care of himself, and he has to take care of others too.
Yeah.
I think some of that is more out of necessity. Some of that idea is probably culturally baked in.
The majority of homeless are men as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nuance to the question that will require probably, I thought, I'm sure a sociologist, anthropologist, or some different doctors, many people with masters and PhD level education could probably comment on it, and all of them probably have a different answer and different context for it.
And solution. A lot of these things, it does appear that even if there was something prescribed, even from a judicial type political space, at the end of the day, it's so individualistic that would it even reach them? Male or female? Do you think that some of these issues are just so problematic and widespread in our culture that even if we had the resources, have we gone too far as a society that we're so disconnected, so against each other, the male-female war, all of these things, the patriarchy, all these conversations that are being had, would it even really reach the people in need?
It's a great question.
The things I wonder.
Yeah. Implementation of certain policies versus the actual policies themselves are sometimes two very different things. Maybe a visual metaphor that comes to mind, it's almost like a ball of spaghetti you can't really untangle, but you can try to look like looking
You can try to cut the spaghetti.
You can try to, maybe the spaghetti is hard to cut, but you can see the sauce underneath, but you're not sure, is that an onions part of the sauce? Is that another tomato? It's really hard to untangle. And it's so many layers of different things that it would be really hard to, the goal is to try to isolate sort of one problem and try to fix it. And then you can do that with another problem, and then the spaghetti gets untangled and everyone feels okay about it. But a bowl of spaghetti or a big bowl of mush where you're trying to pick out the individual grains of whatever it is, it's going to be really, really, really difficult.
Right. And especially when you're talking about one giant group as a whole.
Yes.
It does make me wonder, especially when it comes to men, I do think because of the expectation of the default expectation from birth, you have a son, there's a default expectation for him to deliver financially. There's a default expectation. Even if his wife were to, if he were to marry a woman, and his wife were to have a decent job, there's still an expectation that is innate, that is just there in society, that never goes away. So I do wonder what that looks like in our current economy over the last 10, 15 years. After COVID, everything is just quadrupled in pricing. Our houses, we're fortunate enough that we bought when we did, gained a lot of equity, but I don't think I'll be able to buy this same house, or it would have been just a little bit more difficult to buy this same house if it was today. And so I find that very interesting. I wonder if there's an economic, I believe that there is, because if men derive their value from what we can provide, since, like I said, the expectation's there. We saw the most suicides, or some of the most suicides, during the crash of the economy in 1940s. And it wasn't because these men were just depressed. It's because they could no longer provide what they thought was their innate duty, and what society said is your expected, what we expect of you. And they're like, oh, I can't do this anymore, and they're dropping like flies. Do you think that will ever change, or can it be in such a way where we're able to navigate and find self-worth in a different way as men, as a society, if you could speak to that group?
Yeah, I think it,
and even think of it, a 15-year-old could be watching this, you know what I mean? Who's going to eventually go into the workforce.
I think it goes back to the emotional recognition, regulation, expression. Why does someone feel that way? I think it's important to have some sort of resources to provide for a family. And a lot of people, when they might not be able to do that as easily, what are they feeling on the inside? Some people really are uncomfortable with that, and that probably leads to a lot of struggle mental health wise. I know there's a lot of people too where their parents earn a ton of money, but growing up, they're like, I wish instead of that gift that I got or this new toy, maybe we just spend some time together. And then we grew up in a household of love. I'm not saying that's everyone. I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that was like, I wish I had like 20,000 more a year just to like pay the bills and get something nice.
Or shoot, even knowing how to spend the money, because just because you come from a well-off family doesn't mean you know what to do.
Yeah.
So I've ran into that. Yeah.
It's being able to recognize, why is it stressful? Why do I not like being able to provide financially for my family? How can I think about it? And assuming that I can recognize what I'm feeling, if I've over many years become really good at regulating my emotions, then it'll help me or whoever it is try to find out a better solution. There's less energy focused on this internal battle and more energy focused on, okay, this is how I feel. This is what I can do. Maybe this is sort of an exponential step. I don't feel so upset about it that like it prevents me from action in a way that I think could be helpful.
Okay. What roles does physical health, such as exercise, diet, or sleep, play in coping with everyday stress?
Yeah, I think diet, exercise, sleep are our body's basic rhythms. We need substrate. We need something to go in. We need to be able to have our body's rhythms on a certain kind of schedule. And at our core, just sort of biological beings, extremely important. People say that when those, diet, exercise, sleep, if those are all in good shape, then you're probably going to feel a lot better. When your sleep is off, you're more irritable. When you're not eating as healthy, you are going to be kind of grumpy. You're going to feel a little bit less settled. If you're not getting good physical activity, then the blood is not flowing to your brain as much. You're not able to think as clearly. There's just a lot of really important biological factors. Diet, exercise, sleep. You could argue getting sunlight, not being in a wall-less.
So some people have argued that was one of the biggest mistakes that we had during COVID, is that people weren't getting vitamin D.
Yeah. So there's really important component to just our body's needs that affects our brain, our mind, because our bodies are connected to our brain. Fortunately, for some people, unfortunately, what you do with your body really matters, how it affects your mind.
What's one habit or mindset shift that you believe has been critical to your achievements?
I think there's this concept of resiliency, that grit. It's hard to measure, but the ability to roll the punches, to adapt. I think being able to, there's going to be waves in a body of water, but being able to ride the waves is and feel okay about it. You could have two people riding the same wave, but one feels in control and one doesn't feel in control. And you could also have two people that feel like they have less control over it, and they can recognize it beforehand and then make adjustments. So maybe one mindset shift is, it can be really exhausting, but try to be open for changing things, open for feedback, that requires more energy to be receptive, to be vulnerable. And that is sometimes really painful when you are vulnerable. But over time, I think that creates a better long-term, path to broadly defined success. If you can make some adjustments, hear what people say, have your own internal way of trying to address your own unconscious biases, that can really help growth in a meaningful way.
So what you're feeding into your mind, we talked about the digital age, social media here, is going to play a giant role, and it played a giant role, I'm sure, for you, because you had to deal with the pressure of classes, deal with the pressure of assignments, just the information download.
For sure.
Sounds extreme.
For sure.
And despite what you got handed, you mentioned grit at the beginning, you're saying you had, grit means despite what I'm being presented with, you were stagnant, you were present, you were like, I'm in the wave. You talk about water, and I'm from Florida. And yeah, when that wave catches you, if you panic, there's a good chance you're going to drown, versus understanding, hey, lift your body back, go with the wave. You can't overtake this water. You can't overtake this. So just go with it. You feel like that, just that one little step there in your mind, realizing that, made all the difference?
Yeah, those steps, you have to recognize, how can I both be using the emotional parts of my brain and the logical parts of my brain to work together instead of acting only on emotion or only on logic. You don't want to be a robot and only act on logic. You don't want to be too hot-headed and only act on emotion. But if someone can sort of recognize how they're feeling so they can control it and express it in a healthy way, I would also still integrate the emotions and the rationality part of our brains, that's a good place to be. It's really hard to do all the time.
Sure. I was about to say that because I'm looking right now into systems to be consistent. But even then, you have to build into the systems downtime. Even with servers, they have to be reset. Things have to be rebooted. Things have to be recycled. Just a couple more here for you. What's the most important lesson you've learned about maintaining healthy, long-lasting relationships, whether romantic, familiar, or platonic?
Yeah.
Because a lot of these people, just from the beginning of the conversation, just everyone across life, mental health is going to affect all these areas, or these areas affect your mental health, the relationships you have with people.
I think the one thing that really impacts people's relationship is their understanding of boundaries with other people. It's really hard because most people don't go up to someone else and ask, what are your boundaries? What kind of relationship do you want to engage in?
Unjust conversation.
How often do you want to hang out? How often do you want to spend time together? What are you looking for in a friend? Those are questions that everyone sort of has their own answer to, but most people don't go up to someone and just straight up ask them that. It also depends on the setting that they're in, that someone gets to meet someone else. So there's a lot of really important things. I think once someone gets to know someone a little bit more, you can learn about, what makes people tick, what makes people think or feel a certain way. And what's really important is I think boundaries can feel like an initial rejection at first if someone tries to put up a boundary. But it can also be reaffirming for setting an expectation of, hey, I don't feel comfortable with us getting too close, or I really want us to get a lot closer. And you express that. And while someone may say, I don't know if I want that right now, it can hurt. But also with clear boundaries and expectations, it can really help a relationship grow. I know for some people, expressing their needs, expressing what they're capable of to a person, whether that's a platonic friend, relationship partner, or someone else in their life, that can really help deepen a relationship too. Sometimes there's the perceived relationship rupture, especially when someone's vulnerable and they say, hey, I really care about you. Let's hang out more. Or, I want this relationship to go to this level. And if someone else says,
let's get serious.
Yeah. And sometimes that can be really scary. There's a possibility that the other person may not want the same thing. And if someone is willing to be vulnerable and cares about this relationship, then you can always express some of those things. And you can express those things. And if you're able to talk more about, hey, this is why or why not, I want this thing, I'm going to actually increase your understanding, even though it may feel like a rejection. I think it can also really help.
Wow, that's beautiful. One last question for you, and this is a bonus. So what I want you to do, I want you to imagine with the same faith that you had as when we were kids, anything and everything is possible. Imagine that you have a time machine. You can go back 10 years from now, maybe even longer. Please do share with us though. What is something you would tell yourself with what you know now?
I think the idea of, there's the idea you mentioned of the male person relationship, maybe feeling the pressure to provide for their family. I think the concept that I have is if you work hard, things will work out. And especially if you work hard at your job and you earn a decent enough income to support a family, then that's more than enough. I think that is very important. I wouldn't deny that, but I think also being emotionally present is really important. Still maintaining some sense of your own self-care is really important. And because people are in community, you also be mindful of your own needs as it relates to others' needs. And there's some days that I would come home, 10 years ago and think like, I put in so much hard work, like this is what I deserve. I think that's an idea that maybe it works till it doesn't work, because there's so many other expectations and so many other things that can really help.
Life's still demanding already.
Yeah, life's still demanding. It's not just the job, the career, and the income associated with it. There's a lot of other factors too that can create a good family environment, a good friend, a good relationship. And I think 10 years ago, I guess when I was going to start med school, I think part of the goal of med school is to really get a bunch of information in your head, think in a different way so that we can shape people to be doctors, to be able to think critically and synthesize it and have a bunch of information to be able to recall it in a short period of time. And it's really demanding. There's a lot of other careers that are very demanding too. Other, master's, doctorate programs. You could even argue other like restaurants, like a lot of places that don't necessarily require like quote unquote advanced degrees.
Sure.
There's a significant amount of like skill needed.
Yeah.
A lot of critical thinking, a lot of emotional energy needed to really like have a place run well, to have a family run well. So if I could go back, I'd probably tell myself that's really important to work hard. Things will work out. And like, you still have to like take care of yourself, understand your emotions, try to control them, express them in a healthy way, and do that in a community because we all need community.
Barry, thank you.
Thanks so much.